So we have some breaking news that Beto O'Rourke is endorsing Joe Biden for president. And this follows Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar also endorsing Biden earlier today. They're all going to be at Biden's rally in Texas tonight to basically celebrate the fact that they're uniting in a common cause to stop Bernie Sanders. Beto O'Rourke was supposed to be the next big thing. He was Buttigieg before Buttigieg. He was more well-known than Pete. He almost beat Ted Cruz in a Senate race. He was seen as the hot new thing, but his campaign never really took off, and he dropped out before it ever really became anything serious. But his endorsement is probably seen as having an effect because Texas is one of the biggest Super Tuesday states, one of the biggest states overall. It's voting tomorrow, and Biden hopes that at the very least, Beto will shift some of the vote towards Biden, giving him those extra few delegates from Texas, which will be essential in either catching Bernie or lowering Bernie's chance of winning an outright majority at the convention, upon which the superdelegates can help Biden steal it from Bernie if it comes to that. But this just shows, yet again, the desperation of the non-Bernie faction of the Democratic Party. In less than 72 hours, a series of candidates have dropped out and endorsed Joe Biden, or Democrats that have so far been on the sidelines have all rushed to the forefront to endorse Joe Biden. People in the House, people in the Senate, people no longer holding office but recent office holders from the Obama era, for instance, are all rushing in a mad dash to Joe. This is not a carefully considered program of endorsements. This is a last-ditch effort to stop Bernie Sanders. It may work, it may not work, but the point is, this is all slapdash because they know that Bernie Sanders is still poised to have a very strong Super Tuesday, and people aren't sure of any other way to stop Bernie but just get as many big names on a list, drag them out to Dallas, Texas, and have them endorse Joe Biden, even if they really don't believe in Biden or any of Biden's policies or any of Biden's vision, because the common link between them all is stopping Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders, unlike anybody else, would meaningfully challenge the social, political, economic, and cultural status quo, which the Democrats do not want. Sure, I guess they want to defeat Donald Trump, but not at the expense of electing Bernie Sanders. They would much rather lose to Trump than have Bernie become president, because Bernie Sanders would be a bigger challenge to them than Donald Trump ever was. Trump caused havoc for poor and marginalized people, but the Democratic Party elite were fine and dandy under Donald Trump, and they'll continue to do fine and dandy under Donald Trump. They are members of the 1% and the 0.1% after all, and they look out for their own before any of the regular voting people. But Bernie Sanders looks out for the regular working and middle class, the 99%, and he cannot be allowed to win. This also shows, and it's really sad to see, but it shows why Warren is staying in. Warren is staying in because unlike Buttigieg and unlike Klobuchar and unlike Beto's endorsement and dropping out, which are seen to be helping Biden, Warren staying in the race is likely being calculated as an opportunity to siphon votes from Bernie. It's not necessarily the case that Buttigieg's votes will go more to Biden than they do Sanders. Some polls say that's the case. Some polls say Buttigieg support actually goes more to Bernie than Biden. But at the very least, it's seen as a move to unite the neoliberals. But there's no doubt that if Warren drops out, a strong plurality of her voters will go to Bernie Sanders. Not an outright majority, not everyone, but a strong plurality will go to Bernie Sanders if she drops out here and now. And so she's staying in to try to get as many votes as she can. Whether it's to have a Hail Mary chance of becoming the nominee if Biden and Bernie neither reach a majority at convention. Maybe she feels that she'll be the consensus pick. But more accurately, she's doing this, guys. The only reasonable explanation is she doesn't want Bernie to win for whatever reason. And it's so sad, and we've talked about this, because Bernie Sanders has had such respect and admiration for Elizabeth Warren. And in the last few months, all we've seen from Warren is attack after attack after attack after attack against Bernie Sanders. And earlier tonight on CNN, Anderson Cooper interviewed Bernie Sanders, and he asked Bernie about Warren's recent attacks, where she said that Bernie Sanders has great ideas, but he hasn't accomplished any of them. And indeed, Bernie Sanders has even failed to stop the things he's been against. And all Bernie did was say that he respectfully disagreed with Elizabeth Warren on that assertion, and then calmly went through many of the things he has achieved, helping to fight for a $15 minimum wage, helping to fight for a Green New Deal. Some of these policies haven't been implemented federally, but at the local level, on an individual community basis, Bernie Sanders, in cooperation with local officials and with regular working people, has undeniably made systematic change. And he's transformed the entire discourse, I'm not exaggerating, of American politics, and you cannot put that back in the box. So right now, it has to be said that the party elite, that the media elite, that the corporate elite, even more than before, are all coming together in a last-ditch effort to stop Bernie Sanders. And there's only one thing that can prevent that: the regular voters. And we're not just talking about Bernie voters. Indeed, Bernie's voters got to get to the polls even harder than before if we're facing a fully unified front of neoliberals. But it also falls to the supporters of Klobuchar and Buttigieg, maybe especially Warren, who maybe didn't have Bernie as their first choice, but nonetheless understand that Bernie Sanders would be a far better candidate than Joe Biden, both in terms of being able to face and neutralize the fake populism, the disingenuous working class support of Donald Trump, but also in that Bernie Sanders reflects the progressive desires of the broad Democratic base. They want Medicare for all. They want a Green New Deal. They want to make it easier for workers to join a union. They want to tax the rich on their income and their wealth and their capital gains. These are broadly popular policies across the Democratic Party base, not just among the voters that are supporting Bernie Sanders currently. And it's up to those folks. If you have a friend that's a Warren supporter or a Buttigieg supporter or a Klobuchar supporter, get to those people and say that we understand why you like those candidates. This is not a time to attack people. But you have to understand in this moment that they are not moving to Biden out of a sincere desire to build a unity moment. They are moving to Biden because at any cost, they do not want Bernie Sanders to become president. They know deep down, Klobuchar, Warren, Buttigieg, Beto O'Rourke, all the rest, that Bernie Sanders is a better candidate who better reflects the will of the Democratic Party base and better reflects the needs of the country now and in the future. But that doesn't matter because their interests do not reflect the interests of regular folks. Those regular folks need to reject the advice of the candidate they supported and move to Bernie Sanders. This might be our last chance to prevent a disastrous Joe Biden defeat to Donald Trump. Get behind Bernie Sanders and we can make all the difference.